Welcome to Freedom to Learn, the podcast that champions choice in education, defends parental rights, and exposes the harm caused by school unions. I'm Jenny Gentles, Director of Education Freedom and Parental Rights at DFI, the Defense of Freedom Institute in Washington, D.C. Last week, the New Hampshire legislature passed a bill that expanded eligibility for the state's Education Freedom Account program to all K-12 students. On Tuesday, Governor Kelly Ayotte signed the expansion, making New Hampshire the 17th state with a universal school choice program.
As a mom, I can't think of anything more important than making sure that every child in this state has the opportunity to reach his or her full potential in the setting that works best for them in terms of education.
Our guest today will focus on what happens next. How do New Hampshire families find out about the state's many educational options, and how do they connect with education providers? Jody Underwood is a retired learning scientist living off the grid in a small town in New Hampshire. She served on the Croydon School Board from 2010 to 2023. She's a founding board member of the School District Governance Association, and she's the president of Education Options, or EdOpt, an organization founded last year to provide information, support, and connections to families who want to explore education options. Jody Underwood, welcome to Freedom to Learn.
Thank you for having me.
So I read that you live or lived off the grid, but we're here today connected over the internet. So is that a past tense?
Oh no, I'm off grid. We're using Starlink. It's the best that we've ever had up here. So we have no public cables coming to our house. So, no public telephone or electricity for that matter. Yeah.
And is that just part of being a New Hampshire resident, live free or die state kind of mentality? Is that a regular thing there?
There are a lot of people who live this way. Yeah, but we're in the minority.
I love that. I'm here in the nation's capital. There's no living off the grid. We're going to talk about New Hampshire's education freedom options and how you and your organization help families navigate their choices. But I'm curious about your education policy background. You served on a school board for a long time. What did you take from that experience?
Sure. Well, first, I'm a learning scientist. I have a PhD in education, and I spent many years helping kids learn, figuring out ways that how they do learn and what would support them in learning. But being on the school board, I was on the school board for from 2010 to 2022, so a little over 12 years. And it was an interesting experience. I was trying to make change from the inside there. One of the things I was able to do during that period was, so in Northern New England, we have this thing called town tuitioning. If you're a district that doesn't provide all of the grades, the school board can tuition kids out to nearby school districts, other schools in the area, public schools. But I don't know how we finally succeeded, but we got to expand that. I shepherded a bill through the state legislature. It took 2 rounds to do it, to expand that to private schools. And so now any district that is a tuitioning district in New Hampshire can do that. And so we do. In Croydon, we do. So I live in a small town. We have population 800 people, just adding to that off-grid thing. I'm from New York City originally, by the way. So this is a big difference for me. Yeah. And then there was a U.S. Supreme Court decision for Montana that said if you're going to pay for, tax dollars are going to be used to pay for private schools, then you have to allow religious schools. So Croydon said, okay. And so now we're the only town in New Hampshire that's actually doing it, but we send a lot of kids to a local Catholic school, as well as some private schools in the area. So I feel very good about that. On the other hand, so we have a K-4 school with about 30 kids, give or take, every year. And it's multi-grade classrooms. And so over the years, I talked to the teaching principals, which is typically what we've had, about grouping them by ability and not by grade, because I think that's a disservice to the kids, And one reaction I had from a principal was that, that sounds good, but I'm required to cover the standards for every kid in every grade. And so you're like doubling my workload. And it's like, okay, that's one way of looking at it. And so that's her training, right? And that's how teachers are trained. And I talked with the state commissioner of education about it. And he's like, that's not what the standards are supposed to be used for. It's like, you're supposed to use it to guide you for what you should be doing next. But teachers aren't trained to do that. So there's a problem inside the system to actually help kids learn. They talk about it, but it's frustrating.
So it sounds like from that experience on the school board, you were able to get a sense of what was working, what wasn't working, where you could change things, where you could work with the legislature to change things, and then where culturally the K-12 public education system is just kind of stuck right now.
Yes.
So let's talk about the educational landscape in New Hampshire. You mentioned town tuitioning, and that is a newly expanded option, you said, to private schools, to faith-based private schools. But that option's been around for a long, long time, right?
Well, originally, private schools were included in all the tuitioning options in Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire, and the northern New England states. And then back in 1950 or so, New Hampshire said no, only public schools. But Vermont to today still sends kids to private schools. And I think Maine as well. I'm not as well versed in those two states as New Hampshire, but yeah, is that what you mean? Or
I was asking how long it's been around. So you're like, this is not a new school choice option. Like we hear about education savings accounts, and that's a new development. Town tuitioning has been around for over a century, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And the idea there is if your town doesn't have a district school at your grade level, the district will pay for the child to attend a public or private school inside New Hampshire, but also outside of New
Also
Hampshire.
outside. Yeah.
Okay, so that was one of New Hampshire's original education options, one of the country's original education options, the town tuitioning program. You all also have an education tax credit program, and I understand that that's run by, not by your organization, that's run by the Children's Scholarship Fund of New Hampshire. But can you explain a little bit about what a tax credit scholarship program offers families in the state?
Oh, sure. I mean, so any family who qualifies for it, and I believe it's the same numbers as for currently for the education savings account, which we call education freedom accounts, EFAs in New Hampshire. So if you qualify, if you're under 350% of the federal poverty level, then you can use this money, and it's not a huge amount of money. It's in the order of like $2,000, $2,500, and the numbers change, to either send your kid to a private school, and so maybe that helps with tuition, or maybe they have rolling tuition rates, or to homeschool your kids. So you can use that, and the same goes for EFAs. You can use them for both of those as well.
Okay, so town tuitioning, the tax credit scholarship program, and then EFAs, Education Freedom Account Program, which is New Hampshire's education savings account. This is a newer option. And how does that differ from the tax credit scholarship program?
Just how it's funded. I mean, I'm sure they have little rules that are different, but in general, like from the parent side, they get the same kind of thing from both. So the tax credit scholarship is so named because they get their money either from, donations, and the donations can come from businesses who then get a tax credit for it. So that's the motivation for businesses to donate to it. But anybody can donate to Children's Scholarship Fund for that. Whereas EFAs come from the Education Trust Fund, which is funded by gambling and just all sorts of things. However, they fund that big state level trust fund.
Okay, so rather than a tax credit funded program, it is a state funded program. There are funds set aside and allocated for that. And then is that a growing option in the state? Have families been interested?
Tax credit scholarship?
Well, in the education savings account program.
Oh, EFAs. Oh, yeah, that's growing. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we have a bill in this year that there were 4 bills to make it universal, 3 or 4, and they're coming down to it to decide on how it's going to be done. It looks like it will pass, and I would guess it will sign because Kelly Ayotte ran on school choice. That was one of her issues. So I don't think it's going to have a problem.
So for the folks outside of New Hampshire,
Governor Kelly Ayotte, yes.
The challenge there is that you had Governor Sununu, for so long. It's kind of hard to wrap one's head around the fact that there's somebody else in charge up there now. He's not in office anymore. When Governor Sununu was in office, he was supportive of school choice, though, right?
He was. He came up to Croydon to sign that school choice bill. Yep.
In your
It
town.
was a great day. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And he's a very frank, outspoken person. I've gotten that impression. So it's good when you have a state leader who's like, I'm, I'm all in and you're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
You do need strong leadership
Yeah.
on this
He was
issue.
good on school choice. That's for sure. Yeah.
Great. And then with these programs, there's often interactions, both from a family perspective, from an educator, from a school perspective, of with the state agencies. Do you have a sense of how well the State Department of Education or any of the other state agencies did as far as implementing them, rolling them out, making sure that families were aware of their options, making sure educators and educator providers knew how to participate?
I mean, that's a Children's Scholarship Fund thing. And I mean, it was widely publicized. The Department of Ed, of course, was behind it with our commissioner, Frank Edelblu, who is finishing his tenure this year. So it'll be interesting to see who the new commissioner is, just like new governor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he is totally rather on board with EFAs. Yeah. And
Yeah, again, that leadership is important. And when you have that alignment of a governor making it clear, I'm on board, and then the commissioner or the state superintendent, we call them state education chiefs, saying, we're doing this, that is a powerful combination. So, yes, I've always heard that Frank is great on school choice.
Frank is great on school choice, yes.
All right. So we've been talking about private school choice, some choice options that also support families who are homeschooling, but New Hampshire has additional options, including public school options and like charter schools, open enrollment. How are those options in the state?
So we have public charter schools. All charters are public in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And they're open to everybody in the state. So in that sense, they are open enrollment. There are a couple of open enrollment bills in this year. There is one school in New Hampshire that offers open enrollment right now. But
Wait, one school in the whole state that
correct.
allows?
We have a
Okay.
small state. Don't forget that.
Right.
Yes, one school in the whole state up in the Lakes region. Um, and um, so there's a couple of bills, one for an intra-district open enrollment. So if you're in a district like Manchester, which has many schools to choose from, I mean, if that passes, and I haven't been keeping track of those as well to know where they are in this race, because we're running down in the race, for bills to come into law to get signed. And then there's one that's over the state as well. I mean, they're still alive, and so that could happen. I mean, the tuition rates are going to go up, though. So if you do open enrollment, that's going to act like a town tuitioning town where you pay tuition to the other schools. And so our local taxes have been going up a lot because school costs go up. So, to be honest, I'm of two minds of it. I love the idea that parents can choose any school that they want, but I'm afraid of my taxes going up even more, because the school budgets aren't going to change if they pay tuition to other districts, right? So these are one of the things I battle with personally.
Interesting. I don't think you're alone in that concern, or at least the questions like, how is this going to roll out?
Yeah.
What does this look like? Okay, so we've talked about multiple options. There's also dual enrollment. Families are navigating homeschooling. They're navigating microschools, a new development. Your organization, Education Options, helps New Hampshire families navigate all of these options. What services do you provide?
Sure. So, I mean, we start with our website, which I'm very proud of, actually. We have one of those maps, like if you're searching for a restaurant in your area where you can zoom in and out and see all your things and have filters. And so we have that for schools. And we have filters for, homeschooling, activities, private schools, and Learn Everywhere, which is a program you haven't mentioned. I'm just going to throw it in because this is another option that we have in New Hampshire. The idea is, and Frank Edelblu actually instituted this, and got it passed through law too. It's if you're already doing stuff outside of school, why can't you get credit in school for it? So things like martial arts, there's a flight school that got approved. So if you're taking flying lessons, you can get credit in your high school to help you advance, toward graduation. So, I mean, you could get tutored and get credit that way for anything. So there's a limit to how much you can get credit for because the schools aren't exactly for this. But so that's how it goes. And it's a nice program. It's a good program.
How long has that been around?
Few years. Yeah.
That's great. Well, good. You don't want something to show up just before somebody's leaving and then not have it firmly established. So good if it's been around for a few years and people are starting to embrace it, use it, and will fight for it.
Right.
If there's anyone who tries to get rid of it going forward. All right.
Right.
So all of those options, including Learn Everywhere, and you have a website that families can navigate, click on, and then find out what the options are in their area.
All the options in their area. Yeah. So, but to supplement that, and we developed the website so that we could support having face-to-face expos around different regions of New Hampshire. So we've been doing that. So we've only been around a little over a year. We started last April 2024. Our first expos were the end of August last year, which we did locally. And then we got people around the state which we supported to do expos around there. So we invite all of the local education providers to come have a table. And then we're trying to reach out to families with kids in school who are looking for options to come. And so, I mean, that's how the expos work.
How do you find out about the providers to put them on the map, to invite them to the expo?
So we started by scraping the state education department website. So we got all the private schools and charter schools and public schools from there. And then there's an organization called Granite State Home Educators, which has a really good setup for homeschooling, home education. Really, they're focused on independent home education, actually, and not the EFAs. But I mean, if you're just, doing home education, you can use them. Anybody can use them. And we scraped their site for all the homeschool groups in the state and activities that they had. And then we just continue from there. We look around, we get local people to say, what's in your area that isn't here. And then we now have it on the website that you can just enter your own provider. We have to provider information and we have to approve it and so on. But so it's growing and everybody wants to get on our site because we all have the same goal, right? To reach those families that are looking for options. So we're working together more and more to really make this all work.
Have there been any challenges getting the expos started?
Well, I have to say, every step of the way, energy has been thrown at me. So I had a meeting last September after our expos in the Upper Valley where I live. And I invited people I knew who I knew were interested in education. I called it a growth meeting. And out of that, 3 people volunteered to do expos in their area. And so they did them in December. And a lot of focus on homeschooling. And I know a lot of homeschooling families. So back then, homeschool families were doing it. But people still come up to me. And now the providers are saying, I want to do expos in my area. It just keeps happening. So that's been great. But I'll tell you one challenge we're having, which is, maybe good, maybe bad. But so we're having 2 expos next week. One is in Wolfboro in the Lakes region, and our second annual Upper Valley one will be on Wednesday. But the Tuesday one is being run by a state rep, Glenn Cordelli, and he's been supporting our organization from the beginning. He's very interested in the entrepreneurship aspect to help people start micro schools and learning centers and charter schools for that matter. And private schools, if that's what they want to do. So Glenn Cordelli is organizing this expo, and his Democrat opponent is organizing a protest of this expo next Tuesday. I'm so looking forward to it. I'm sorry if I'm getting pleasure out of it. It says we're doing the right thing, right? That because they're afraid of what we're doing. Now, interestingly, we invite public schools to our expos, and they actually accepted in Wolfboro. They're having a representative from there, and that open enrollment school is invited. Hopefully, they'll show up too. We're not excluding public schools; they are part of school choice, and I mean, especially if we get open enrollment, then it becomes more interesting, I have to say, at one of our expos, we had a public school representative there, and not one person stopped at their table. It was really a bad experience for them. But everybody knows their public school options. So in that sense, I mean, why bother, right? But again, with open enrollment, it'll be different.
It will, and good for that public school for coming, and good for the public school representative recognizing that it's important to inform families about what you're offering, rather than just taking the families for granted. So I cheer them in doing that, and that's great that you continue to invite and welcome the traditional district residentially assigned public schools to come to the expos. How do families find out about your organization, about the expos?
Um, we do social media marketing. Honestly, so the top two reasons people come to expos, I do surveys at each of them and ask all the attendees to fill them out, is word of mouth. Somebody told them about it, or Facebook. So they hear about it in both those ways. So, but we're on Twitter also, X, whatever you want to call it. We hand out flyers. We put them up. We have this round, we're doing yard signs. We keep trying new things. And I have to say, it's hard. I mean, we can't go into the public schools and say, hey, would you hand out these flyers to your families? They won't do it,
Right. No
But
backpack flyers in this case. That can be sometimes with school choice programs. They can write it into the law that the district has to inform families of their options, and some states do that, and some states don't. I heard that you said a couple expos were taking place in December, which would be a chilly time of year for families to come out in New Hampshire. But was that intentional because you want families to start thinking about their options at that point in the school year?
you know, we had that growth meeting in September, and we talked about it, and we said, yeah, let's just try December. And maybe it wasn't the best time. And, cold doesn't scare people. Snowstorms do, but cold doesn't. We're heated. Our cars are heated. It's not that big a deal.
And your cars have snow tires. So
That's right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, most of them.
Yeah. I lived in Canada twice, actually. And yeah, snow tires mean that, okay, it's snowing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm heading out.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't prefer to drive in a snowstorm, but you can. It was also holiday time, so maybe it wasn't the best season to do it. Next year, our focus in the winter will be for National School Choice Week, which is the end of January. So we're going to try to have expos that week instead of December, see how that goes. But spring, summer is when people are planning. So that's when, we're trying to do most of them this year. We just wanted to get them out. And that's, the organizers wanted to do it. We had good attendance for the attendance that we're getting at those expos. So,
Well, I know Andrew Campanella and the National School Choice Week team has always said that it's important, even though it's cold in January, to have National School Choice Week at that point, because that is when families need to be thinking, researching options for the next year. Some private schools have pretty early deadlines, so those applications might need to be put in. There's, various processes that families might need to follow. And so, yes, that wintertime can be a good time to at least start thinking about the options.
There's one more prong that we have, and we offer consultations, I should say, for families who want guidance in what they do. So you can look at your options on our website, but you don't always know what you can do, And so, like I said, people don't know, I think I said this, people don't know about micro schools or learning centers or even homeschool co-ops. And so to hear about them, they suddenly change their minds about homeschooling, right? They think that they have to do homeschooling by themselves, but they don't. There's so much support for them, including, co-ops and micro schools and so on. So
they set up an appointment on your website, and then your team meets with them to walk them through all the options?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the homeschooling community and the fact that they could use the education savings account program, or they could choose not to, are you all seeing families wrestle with that decision? Do they have concerns about using the state-funded program?
Absolutely. You get all of it, really. I've had consultations with a couple of families about whether they should use EFAs or not. And I try to give them both sides of the story, the pros and cons. I'm not promoting either. And our website has a very nice table that does a comparison one-to-one for what both programs offer. So we hope that that's clear for families. Yeah.
What would be a pro for a homeschooling family to use an ESA?
To use an EFA, a pro, I mean, they get more money to spend on their kids, that, that they may or may not be able to afford. And when, it goes to universal, I mean, I know some families who currently don't qualify, but are looking forward to getting it. Because, even if you don't qualify, you might still, it doesn't mean you're, wealthy beyond all means, right? So, I mean, they get more money. A lot of them think about it as, well, I'm paying property taxes. I may as well get it back to use it for my kids, and I wish I had that option. I don't have kids in school, right? So, those are the pros. But of course, the cons is that there is more oversight from the state on what you can do. You can only use approved vendors. So I'm not saying it's hard to get approved, but you're not in full control of what your kids can do. If you are an independent homeschooler, you have a choice of doing a yearly test, keeping a portfolio, or some other means of gauging whether your kids are advancing that you work out with. You have to have some kind of proctor, somebody that reviews your stuff. You never have to give your information to the state. With EFAs, you don't have that third option. You have to either do testing or a portfolio. I believe you can still use somebody from a private school or so on to review your material, but you are reporting to CSF, Children's Scholarship Fund, and so they're a conduit into the state. So you're sharing your information with the state all around. And those are generally the pros and cons. And there are two separate laws that guide both of those pathways, is what they call them.
Yeah, and that seems important. As we wrap up, I read, I think this must have been in your bio, that your dream has always been to revolutionize learning environments, to engage individuals to move ahead at their own pace. So are you fulfilling that dream in your current role?
I feel like I am. In the beginning, I was doing it through artificial intelligence, intelligent tutoring systems a long, long time ago, before AI is where it is today. And, and now I've retired from my day job, and this is a volunteer position, but it has turned into, taking up a lot of my time. But yeah, and we are using AI to help us. We're going to, have them help guide people on our website too. We're working on a chatbot to do that. But yeah, I feel like I'm finally doing that thing that I've always wanted to do. Yes.
That's exciting. How can people follow your organization, follow developments as education options expand in New Hampshire?
Yes. I mean, visit our website, edopt.org, edopt.org, and you can subscribe to our newsletter. I send out weekly announcements. They're often about Expos, but they're often about other things too. So that's the easiest way to follow us, or follow us on Facebook too. We have a page there. Those are and X as well. So you could follow us on any of those platforms.
Great. Jody Underwood, thank you for your commitment to education freedom, and thank you for joining Freedom to Learn.
Thank you so much for having me.
Freedom to Learn is a production of the Defense of Freedom Institute. You can learn more about DFI at dfipolicy.org. If you have feedback or suggestions for future podcasts, please reach out to us at podcast@dfipolicy.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.